Have you ever felt like the world is moving on without you, leaving you behind in solitude? You try to connect, but the bonds seem to break, and the silence grows louder. It's as if Allah is pulling you away from everyone and everything. But why, my dear brothers and sisters? This isolation is not a punishment, it's preparation. Allah isolates the ones He chooses to refine, protect, and guide them to something far greater. Today, we'll explore 7 profound reasons why Allah isolates the chosen ones, reasons that carry a wisdom most of us fail to see. Before we begin, reflect on this. What if this loneliness you're feeling is Allah's way of calling you closer to Him, away from the noise of the world? Let's find out why Allah is isolating you and how this could be the greatest blessing of your life. Let's begin. No, one isolation to protect your heart. Have you noticed how when you're surrounded by people, your heart can easily get distracted, caught up in fleeting conversations, worldly comparisons, or even harmful influences? These distractions may not always be malicious, but they pull your attention away from what truly matters. The endless noise, the opinions of others, and the constant rush of life can make it hard to hear your own heart, let alone hear the whispers of Allah's guidance. Allah, in His infinite wisdom and mercy, sometimes pulls you away from these distractions, my dear brothers and sisters, not as a punishment, but as a way of protecting your heart. Think about a precious gem for a moment. In order to preserve its brilliance and beauty, it's kept away from anything that could scratch or dull it. If a gem is left in a busy marketplace or an environment full of sharp objects, it would lose its luster. In the same way, your heart, which Allah has placed immense value on, must be shielded from influences that could tarnish its purity. Consider this: you've been surrounded by friends, colleagues, or acquaintances who, whether intentionally or not, subtly mock your deen or encourage you to stray from it. At first, you might brush it off, but over time, you begin to compromise just a little here, a little there. Maybe you start skipping prayers, or you find yourself participating in conversations that don't align with your values. You don't realize it, but your connection with Allah begins to weaken. And then, just when you're feeling lost, something happens. Those same people who once surrounded you drift away, either because of distance, changing circumstances, or the natural course of life. You might feel confused, even hurt, as if you've lost something important. But in hindsight, can you see that this was Allah's mercy in action? He was saving you from something that could have damaged your relationship with Him. It's hard to see the wisdom in this at the moment. The silence feels deafening, and the loneliness might seem unbearable. You may wonder why certain people have been taken out of your life or why your social circle is shrinking. But remember, sometimes what feels like a loss is actually a blessing. Allah doesn't take away people or situations from our lives without reason. Every action of His, even when we can't understand it, has a purpose, and it's always rooted in love and mercy. This distance, this isolation, is a chance for you to reset. It is an opportunity to purify your heart and realign your intentions. When you're surrounded by distractions and noise, it becomes difficult to hear the quiet call of Allah. But when the world around you falls silent, when the people who once distracted you drift away, that's when Allah's voice can be heard most clearly. His love, His guidance, and His peace are waiting to fill the emptiness you may feel. Think of the ayah, so do not weaken and do not grieve, and you will be superior if you are true believers. This verse serves as a reminder that even in moments of loneliness and isolation, you are not abandoned. It might feel like you are alone, but Allah is always near. The loneliness you feel is actually a space for Allah to fill with His love, His mercy, and His guidance. When you have no one else to turn to, you turn to Allah. And when you turn to Him, you realize that He is everything you need. In those quiet moments, when the world has faded into the background, take a moment to reflect. Let the loneliness be an invitation for you to reconnect with Allah. You might find that your heart, once distracted by the noise of the world, now beats in rhythm with the divine. The silence becomes sacred, the solitude becomes healing, and the distance from others becomes the closest you've ever felt to your Creator. So, my dear brothers and sisters, trust that when Allah pulls you away from the world, it's not to punish you, it's to protect you. It's to refine your heart, to purify your soul, and to align you more closely with Him. The moment you begin to see this isolation as an opportunity for growth, you'll find that it's not a burden, but a blessing. In the space that is created by the absence of people and distractions, Allah can fill your heart with a peace that nothing in this world can offer. The loneliness you feel is a sign that Allah is drawing you closer. Let this be a reminder that the best company, the most fulfilling relationship, is with your Creator. And in this solitude, you may just find the greatest connection you've ever known. No to isolation to refine your character. Have you ever noticed how, when you start working on yourself, the noise of the world seems to fade? It's as if Allah is deliberately removing the distractions, the unnecessary chatter, and even the people who might not align with your path. Why? Because isolation is Allah's way of refining you. Think about it. When you're surrounded by noise, whether it's constant opinions from others, meaningless distractions, or even unhealthy relationships, it's nearly impossible to hear your own thoughts, let alone connect deeply with Allah. Solitude strips away these layers. It forces you to confront who you really are and what truly matters. Let me ask you, have you felt this before? That in the quiet, uncomfortable moments of being alone, you suddenly see parts of yourself you didn't want to face. Maybe it's a habit you've been ignoring or a weakness you've been hiding. Allah isolates you not to punish you, but to help you grow. Take a moment to reflect on this. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, often withdrew to the cave of Hira before receiving revelation. Those moments of solitude weren't just physical isolation, they were spiritual preparation. In the same way, your moments of isolation could be Allah's way of preparing you for something greater. But let's be real, it's not easy. Sometimes being alone feels heavy, even painful. You might wonder why people who were once close to you are suddenly distant. Let me tell you, not everyone is meant to walk with you on this journey. Some people are seasonal companions, while others are there to teach lessons before stepping away, and that's okay. Remember this, the discomfort of solitude is temporary, but the clarity and strength it brings can last a lifetime. It's in this stillness that you learn to depend on Allah fully, without relying on anyone else. You start to see that your worth isn't tied to the approval of others, but to your relationship with your Creator. Now let's reflect. Have you ever felt like isolation is unfair, or that it's a sign you're doing something wrong? It's not. It's Allah crafting you into the person He knows you can be. No. 3. Isolation strengthens your relationship with Allah. Have you ever felt like no one truly understands what you're going through? Like even when you try to explain your struggles, the responses don't resonate? This feeling isn't random. It's a divine invitation. When Allah isolates you, it's His way of drawing you closer to Him. I think about it. In times of ease, we often rely on people, friends, family, even material comforts. But in solitude, when those crutches are removed, you're left with the one who has been there all along, Allah. Let me ask you this. How many times have you turned to Allah with your whole heart, your tears flowing, only when you felt you had no one else to turn to? Isolation forces this deep reliance. It's as if Allah is saying, come to me. Let me be enough for you. But let's clear something up. This isn't about separating yourself from the Ummah. Islam is about unity, and the strength of our community lies in the bond of believers. What we're talking about here is a spiritual journey, a personal transformation that allows you to contribute to that unity in a stronger, more meaningful way. Look at the life of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. He faced moments of profound loneliness, whether in the cave of Hira, on the battlefields, or during the hardships in Makkah. Yet those moments weren't about division, they were about preparation. Through those experiences, he emerged as the leader who united the Ummah under the banner of Islam. Your isolation is no different. It's not about distancing yourself from others permanently. It's about temporarily stepping back to recharge, realign, and reconnect with Allah. When you return to the community, you do so with a stronger sense of purpose and contribution. So, if you're feeling alone right now, let this be a reminder. This isn't about separation. It's about strengthening your foundation. And when your foundation is strong, your ability to unite with and uplift others becomes even greater. No, for the isolation is a training ground. You may have noticed this pattern in your life. Every time you're about to grow, something or someone is removed from your life. Maybe it was a friendship you thought was unbreakable, or a support system you leaned on for years, and now, suddenly, it's gone. You might feel abandoned, confused, or hurt. But have you ever paused to ask yourself, why is this happening? What if, just maybe, it's not a loss at all, but a divine intervention? Isolation isn't rejection, it's refinement. Allah, in His infinite wisdom, removes distractions and attachments that could cloud your path. Sometimes we hold on so tightly to people, places, and things, not realizing that they are hindering us from becoming who we are truly meant to be. Allah, in His mercy, removes these distractions not to punish us, but to help us grow. It's His way of sharpening our focus, of teaching us lessons we couldn't learn in comfort. I think about it. When we are surrounded by distractions, we often fail to see the deeper lessons that are meant to shape us. But when we are isolated, we are forced to confront our inner selves, to reflect on our intentions, and to realign our hearts with Allah. Let's reflect on the story of Prophet Yusuf, peace be upon him. When he was thrown into the well, he was not only stripped of his family and support system, but he was also physically isolated in a dark, cold place. At that moment, it would have seemed like a cruel abandonment. His family, whom he had loved and trusted, was no longer there. His future, once so certain and bright, was now uncertain and bleak. But in hindsight, we can see that this isolation was not abandonment. It was preparation. Allah wasn't leaving Yusuf, peace be upon him, to suffer for no reason. He was preparing him for something greater. In the silence of that well and later in prison, Prophet Yusuf, peace be upon him, was being molded into the leader he was destined to be. He was being shaped, tested, and refined. Each hardship, each moment of solitude brought him closer to Allah. By the time he emerged from that isolation, he wasn't just a man, he was a man of extraordinary wisdom, resilience, and unwavering faith. And not only was he a man of strength, but he was also a man who could forgive those who had wronged him and serve the people of his nation with justice and compassion. Here's a question to reflect on. What if the challenges you are facing right now are your own training ground? What if the pain you're experiencing, the isolation, and the loss of people or things you've held dear are all part of Allah's plan to prepare you for something far greater than what you can see today? What if the very thing that feels like a setback is actually a step forward in your journey toward your destiny? Let's be honest for a moment. It hurts. It's painful to lose people, to face the silence, and to feel like you've been forgotten or left behind. These moments can leave you questioning your worth, wondering why you've been singled out for hardship while others seem to thrive. But here's something you must always remember. Diamonds are formed under pressure, and the finest swords are forged in fire. The most beautiful gems are those that have been through intense heat and pressure, yet emerge shining brighter than before. The struggles you face in isolation, the challenges that make you feel broken and alone, are the very tools Allah uses to refine you into a better version of yourself. It's natural to want to fill the silence, to seek distractions, or to force connections with people who may no longer belong in your life. But sometimes, it's important not to rush. Don't rush to fill the emptiness with things that won't benefit you. Don't force connections that Allah has chosen to remove for your own good. Instead, use this time to look inward and upward. Reflect on the changes happening within you. Ask yourself, what is Allah teaching me through this? Is He teaching you patience, resilience, humility, faith? The solitude you are experiencing isn't a punishment, it's a gift. It's a chance to draw closer to Allah, to build a stronger relationship with Him, and to develop the strength that you will need for the next phase of your journey. When you shift your perspective, you begin to see isolation in a different light. What once seemed like a cruel punishment now becomes a sacred opportunity for growth. The challenges you face are not meant to break you, they are meant to build you. They are shaping you, refining you, and preparing you for the role you are meant to play in this world. You may not see it now, but when you come out of this phase, you will realize something profound. The solitude, the silence, the moments of loneliness weren't meant to destroy you. They were meant to build you up, to fortify your heart, to cleanse your soul, and to prepare you for something greater that Allah has planned for you. So, The next time you feel the weight of isolation, remember that this is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of something new, something powerful. It is the beginning of a process that will lead to your refinement, your growth, and your transformation. Don't rush it. Embrace the silence, embrace the solitude, and trust that in this time, Allah is shaping you into the person you were always meant to be. And just like the example of Prophet Yusuf, peace be upon him, when your time comes to emerge from this isolation, you will not only be stronger, wiser, and more resilient, but you will be ready to fulfill the purpose Allah has prepared for you. Trust in the process and know that you are not alone. Allah is with you every step of the way. No, 5. Allah's plan requires patience. Have you ever felt like your life is in a holding pattern, as if the progress you crave is just out of reach? Maybe you're watching others move forward while you seem to be stuck. It's frustrating, isn't it? But let me tell you this, Allah's delay is not His denial. Sometimes He places you in isolation because He's preparing something far greater for you. The waiting period isn't wasted time. It's an essential part of the process. Think of it as a cocoon. Just as a caterpillar must endure stillness to emerge as a butterfly, your isolation is a phase of transformation. Prophet Musa, peace be upon him, experienced this before he was called to lead his people. He spent years away from Egypt, herding sheep in the wilderness. To many, that may have looked like a step backward, but in reality, it was the exact preparation he needed to become the leader Allah destined him to be. Here's a question for you. What if the waiting is where Allah is working the most in your life? What if this time is about strengthening your faith, sharpening your skills, and clearing the distractions that would have held you back? Patience doesn't mean passivity. It's an active trust in Allah's timing. It's about using this period to build yourself spiritually, mentally, and emotionally. So when the moment comes, you're ready to step into what Allah has planned for you. Remember, Allah knows the perfect time for everything. What feels like a delay to you is part of His divine design. The pause isn't punishment, it's preparation. No, 6. Isolation refines your intentions. Sometimes being alone can feel unbearable, the silence, the solitude. It can make you question everything. But here's the hidden truth. Isolation is where your intentions are purified. When you're surrounded by people, their opinions, judgments, and expectations can cloud your heart. You might find yourself doing things to seek their approval, even unconsciously. But when Allah pulls you away from the noise, it's an invitation to reflect, to ask yourself, who am I doing this for? Is it for people or for Allah alone? Take the example of Prophet Abraham, peace be upon him. When he was isolated from his people for his unwavering belief in Allah, his solitude became the foundation of his strength. He wasn't concerned about pleasing his community, he was focused solely on earning Allah's pleasure. His isolation wasn't a punishment, it was a gift that allowed his faith to shine brightly. Isn't it the same with us? Think about it. How often do we get caught up in trying to meet the world's expectations? How often do we let others' opinions dictate our self-worth? In isolation, Allah gives you the chance to break free from this trap. Ask yourself, if no one was watching, would you still pray with the same dedication? Would you still give charity? Would you still strive to improve yourself? Isolation reveals your true intentions. It strips away the distractions and leaves you face to face with your sincerity. So the next time you feel alone, remember this. Allah is refining your heart. He's preparing you to act purely for His sake, not for the applause of people. And that is where the real power lies. No, 7. Isolation prepares you for your unique role. When Allah isolates you, it's not without purpose. He's shaping you for a mission that only you can fulfill. The silence, the loneliness, they're tools in His plan to build something extraordinary within you. Let's reflect on the story of Prophet Yusuf, peace be upon him. Thrown into a well by his brothers, sold into slavery, and unjustly imprisoned, his isolation wasn't random. Every moment of solitude prepared him to rise as a leader who would save nations from famine. His time away from the world wasn't a curse. It was training for his destiny. And what about you? Do you ever feel like the path you're on is so different from everyone else's that it's almost unbearable? Like no one understands the weight you're carrying? That's because your journey is unique. Allah isn't isolating you to break you, He's isolating you to prepare you for a role that no one else can fulfill. Maybe you're being strengthened to be the anchor for your family, or perhaps you're meant to be a source of guidance in your community. The world needs people who've walked through fire, who've faced loneliness, and come out stronger on the other side. Think about it. The most resilient steel is forged in the hottest flames. Your isolation isn't a punishment, it's a process. It's Allah telling you, you're being molded for something greater. Trust me. So the next time you feel cut off from the world, remind yourself that it's not the end of your story. It's the beginning of a new chapter, one where your strength and faith will shine brighter than ever. So, my dear brothers and sisters, as we've explored together, isolation isn't a punishment, it's preparation. It's Allah's way of elevating you, refining you, and bringing you closer to Him. Every tear, every moment of loneliness, every silent prayer, it's not wasted. It's all part of a divine plan, one that's shaping you into the person you're meant to be. Remember the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, who spent time in the cave of Hira, away from the noise of the world. It was in that solitude that he received the first revelation, the moment that changed the course of humanity forever. Your isolation too could be the prelude to something transformative. If this video has resonated with you, I encourage you to reflect in the comments below. Perhaps a simple phrase like, Ya Allah, help me find strength in my solitude, can inspire not just you, but also others who are on this same journey. And before you leave, consider watching the video suggested at the end of this one. It delves into another life-changing topic that I truly believe will complement everything we've discussed today. Click on it and take your next step towards understanding Allah's wisdom in your life. May Allah guide us all, strengthen our faith, and make our trials a means of drawing closer to Him. Ameen.